The day I moved into my new home was one of those picture-perfect early summer mornings when the air felt like possibility and everything seemed to shimmer with promise. The neighborhood was quiet, a little too neat maybe, with perfectly trimmed hedges, identical mailbox styles, and SUVs that all seemed to have the same dull metallic gray finish. But I didn't care. I had finally done it. After years of scraping by, long hours in brutal startup culture, ramen noodle dinners, and sleeping on a futon that should have been burned in college, I'd sold my stake in the tech company I co-founded and walked away with enough to buy a house outright. Not just any house. A modern, sun-drenched bungalow at the end of a cul-de-sac, bordered by trees, and with a backyard that opened up to a stunning, private patch of woods. It was peaceful. The birds were loud but musical, the wind was just enough to cool the skin but not scatter your things. And the best part, the absolute best part, was the pool. Not some small inflatable thing wedged into a corner, but a proper in-ground, L-shaped pool with a waterfall feature, a smooth stone deck, and just enough space around it to set up a lounge chair, a patio table, and even string some soft outdoor lights. That pool was my oasis. It was the one indulgence I'd allowed myself. No furniture yet in the house, besides a mattress on the floor and a folding table, but I had the pool and I was proud of it. I'd been living there for about a week, keeping to myself, spending my mornings working remotely on some consulting contracts, and my afternoons by the water. I didn't feel the need to rush decorating the inside. After years of stress, I needed sunlight, stillness, and a place to unwind. That afternoon, I was stretched out on my lounge chair, wearing my favorite pair of oversized sunglasses, a simple swimsuit, and earbuds playing a lo-fi playlist. The sun was warm, not scorching, and the combination of the water's soft lapping and the birds made me feel almost drowsy in the best way. I had a cold bottle of sparkling water beside me, and a thin paperback thriller open on my stomach. The world was quiet, peaceful. I remember distinctly thinking, this is what it was all for. And then I heard it. A voice, high-pitched, sharp, and cutting through the calm like someone had jabbed a fork into a vinyl record. "Excuse me. Hello? Excuse me," came the shriek. At first, I thought maybe it was a lost delivery person, or someone from the HOA dropping off a welcome pamphlet. I sat up slowly, tugging one earbud out, and looked around. Standing just beyond the edge of my pool fence, leaning slightly over a trimmed boxwood hedge, was a woman I didn't recognize. She had that sort of aggressively composed appearance, the kind where every strand of her highlighted bob seemed sprayed into position, where her athleisure outfit looked more expensive than practical, and where her frown looked permanently etched into her face like stone. "Do you live here?" she demanded, her voice dripping with suspicion. I was momentarily thrown. I blinked and said, Yeah? Can I help you?" "This is private property," she snapped, folding her arms across her chest with exaggerated righteousness. "And I've never seen you before. You look, well, frankly, disheveled. I'm calling the police." I was so caught off guard I actually laughed. I thought she had to be joking, maybe some twisted neighborhood prank to test new residents. But her expression didn't change. In fact, it darkened. Her eyes narrowed further, and she pulled her phone out as if she had practiced the motion for years. Her fingers moved with deliberate speed. "I know the owners of this house," she continued, voice raised as if performing for a non-existent audience. "And they're not you. You're squatting here, aren't you? Squatting and using someone's pool. Absolutely shameful. I'm calling the police right now." That's when the absurdity of the situation turned from comedic to something else. Something ugly. I stood up slowly, trying to control the flash of irritation rising in my chest. "Look," I said, trying to stay calm. "I own this property. I bought it 2 weeks ago. My name is on the deed. If you want to verify it, you can look it up." "Don't patronize me," she hissed, holding her phone up like it was a badge. "You think I'm stupid? I can see your pool towels and your dirty backpack over there. This whole setup screams homeless squatter." For the record, the dirty backpack she referred to was a North Face bag that I'd taken on hiking trips. It was sitting next to a very clean towel and my hydro flask. I took a deep breath and said, "Please leave my property. I don't know who you are, but you're making a serious mistake." She ignored me completely, turning to walk back toward the street, still on the phone. Yes, I need an officer sent to 3497 Birch Hollow Lane. There's a suspicious individual trespassing, possibly mentally unstable. No furniture in the house, just lying by the pool like they live here. Yes, I'm afraid for my safety. I stood frozen in disbelief. It wasn't just her misunderstanding. She was deliberately lying. She hadn't even tried to ask for proof or knocked on my door. She saw someone she didn't recognize, decided I didn't belong, and weaponized 911 against me. A wave of fury rose in my chest, but I forced it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. I walked inside, grabbed my wallet and phone from the makeshift indoor table, and returned outside just in time to see her disappear into the house across the street. She didn't even live next door. She lived diagonally across. Her backyard wasn't even connected to mine. She must have been watching me from the start, waiting for an excuse. 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up in front of my home. 2 officers stepped out, a younger one who looked like he was still new, and an older, heavier man who had the weary gait of someone who had handled one too many noise complaints. They didn't approach aggressively, which I appreciated, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. The younger one offered a polite nod. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said. "We got a call about a potential trespassing situation. Would you mind showing us some ID and proof of residence?" I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my driver's license and then scrolled through my phone until I found the PDF of the deed, downloaded straight from the closing attorney's email. I also pulled up my utility account, which I had activated the day after moving in. The younger officer scanned through the documents and nodded slowly. "Looks like everything checks out," he said, glancing at his partner, who gave a low grunt in acknowledgement. "Can I ask who made the report?" I said, though I already knew. The older officer looked vaguely uncomfortable. "A neighbor across the way. Said you didn't look like you belonged. Claimed the house looked empty." "I haven't moved all my furniture in yet," I said. "But that doesn't mean I'm a squatter. That's a pretty serious accusation." "We understand," the younger one said. "Unfortunately, we're required to respond to these kinds of calls. But from what we can see, you're fully within your rights. Sorry to trouble you." As they turned to leave, I noticed the curtain twitch across the street. Karen, because of course that was her name, was watching from behind the blinds, trying to look innocent while still hungry for confirmation that her personal witch hunt had succeeded. I didn't wave. I didn't say anything, but I held her gaze long enough to make sure she knew I saw her. After the officers left, I sat back down by the pool, but the peace was gone. My chest felt tight. My thoughts raced. Not just at the injustice of being accused of trespassing at my own home, but the knowledge that she'd seen me and assumed, immediately, that I didn't belong, not based on anything real, but on whatever prejudice lived in her head. That I was too disheveled. That having no furniture somehow equated to homelessness. That lounging in my own backyard made me a suspect. What bothered me most wasn't the accusation. It was the confidence with which she made it. She didn't ask. She didn't knock. She didn't offer a concerned introduction. She called the cops. As her first move, I found myself pacing the deck, anger simmering under my skin. I wasn't going to let this go. Not because I was afraid of her, far from it, but because I knew if I didn't stand firm now, it would only escalate. Women like her didn't stop. They doubled down. They twisted stories to fit their view of the world, and then cried victim when called out. Later that evening, after the sun had set and the pool lights cast soft glows against the water, I typed up a note. Not a threatening one, just a firm, polite message clarifying my identity and ownership of the house, with a reminder that false police reports were a crime. I dropped it in her mailbox the next morning, and for a while, things were quiet. But that quiet didn't last long, because women like Karen don't back down. They escalate. And I was already preparing for whatever came next. The morning after the police confirmed I was the rightful homeowner and not, in fact, a sunbathing squatter, I stepped outside to grab the newspaper. Yes, I still liked the physical kind, and nearly missed the duct-taped note slapped crookedly on my front door. In large block letters, the message read, We don't want your kind here. Sell and leave. You don't belong in this neighborhood. It was signed ominously, if not cowardly, by concerned residents. The phrase "your kind" simmered in my chest like gasoline poured over a slow flame. I could feel the heat of indignation rising, my breath catching in that split second before fury ignites. I wasn't just mad. I was insulted, disgusted, and suddenly very sure that this Karen wasn't alone. I had bought a home in a gated community, but what I hadn't realized was that the gates weren't just physical. They were cultural, social, and enforced by fear and suspicion. And I wasn't going to run. No way. They wanted me gone. They'd have to drag me out kicking and screaming, and I'd make sure every step cost them dearly. I went inside and brewed a cup of coffee, then sat down at my laptop and started typing. I wasn't just some homeless squatter with a sun chair and a book. I was a digital strategy consultant who specialized in reputational defense, online visibility, and public relations crisis management. People paid me well to handle smear campaigns, control digital narratives, and elevate online presence. And now I had a project of my own, defending my right to live peacefully in my own damn home. First, I wrote a calm, respectful, yet firm letter addressed to the HOA board. I made sure to attach the title deed, a screenshot of my bank transfer for the purchase, and a smiling photo of me standing in front of the sold sign on closing day. I cited specific sections of the HOA charter that protected homeowners from harassment, defamation, and targeted intimidation. I requested an emergency board meeting within 7 business days, as allowed under the HOA bylaws. I CC'd the county real estate office, the local sheriff's department, and a reporter I knew at the local community beat. Then I hit send. Karen wanted to play games? I had time. And receipts. Within hours, my inbox lit up. The HOA secretary, a woman named Missy who used an email signature with a cartoon cat and 5 different fonts, replied apologetically but cautiously. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I am deeply disturbed by the note you received. Please know that the board does not condone such behavior. We'll investigate and get back to you shortly. Yeah, right. I didn't believe for one second that the board would take action without being pushed. But I was fine with that. I'd already begun building my digital case file. I had cameras. I had timestamps. I even had footage from my Ring doorbell showing a figure slipping something onto my door at 3:07 a.m., wearing a visor and what looked suspiciously like Lululemon leggings. I hadn't yet published anything, but the footage sat in a locked folder labeled Karen Strike 1. By lunchtime, the neighborhood buzz had begun. I could see them peeking, curtains twitching like nervous eyelids. Someone walked their dog unusually slowly past my driveway, casting sidelong glances as if expecting to see me sleeping on a pile of rags by the garage. I smiled, waved, and then pulled my brand new Tesla out of the garage and cruised slowly down the cul-de-sac, windows down, letting the Bluetooth playlist roll out just enough SZA and Anderson, Pac to be noticed but not obnoxious. As I looped around the corner, I caught Karen on her front lawn, furiously pruning a rose bush that had already been cut to near death. Our eyes locked. I offered her a sunny "good morning," and she blinked like I'd slapped her with a silk glove. The nerve of me, to smile after she tried to get me arrested. Later that day, I went to the hardware store and picked up supplies. A motion-activated camera for the mailbox, a bright solar spotlight to install near the driveway, and a custom yard sign that read, "Private property. Harassment will be prosecuted. Smile, you're on camera." If I couldn't stop her from spreading rumors, I could at least create a paper trail. I was also preparing a formal cease and desist letter. I didn't plan to send it yet. No, that would come after the HOA meeting, but it made me feel better to know I had it ready. That night, I poured a glass of wine, reclined on my pool lounger, and read the latest legal blogs. Let her think I was just lounging. I was building a defense fortress from under a sun hat. But the next morning, Karen escalated. I woke to find a small gathering on her front lawn. 6 or 7 neighbors, some holding coffee, others pretending to casually admire her over-trimmed azaleas while obviously listening intently. She was animated, gesturing toward my house. I couldn't hear her words, but her pantomime was crystal clear. Hands waving in frantic circles, exaggerated frowns, miming holding a phone and pointing toward my home like it was a crime scene. She was building her army. That's when I decided to play offense. I walked over, deliberately, calmly, wearing the softest, coziest bathrobe I owned, slippers that whispered confidence, and a mug that read, "Sorry I'm late. I didn't want to come." Their conversation dropped to a hush as I approached. Karen's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't back down. "Good morning," I chirped brightly. "I just wanted to say hi. Seems like you all are having a nice little meet and greet. Mind if I join?" They shifted uncomfortably. A few of them managed awkward nods or weak smiles. Karen forced a grin that looked more like a wince. "Actually, we were just discussing community safety," she said smoothly. "Oh, I love that," I replied. "I'm all about safety. In fact, after the false police report and the note taped to my door, I installed some new cameras. Can't be too careful, right?" A man in a tennis visor coughed into his cup. One of the women stepped back. Karen blinked, caught off guard, but quickly recovered. "Yes, well, some of us are just a little on edge. You know, unusual activity, unfamiliar faces." "Oh, totally," I said, nodding. "That's why I sent footage to the sheriff's department, just to be safe. And the HOA board too. Did you know they're opening an investigation?" Karen froze. I smiled. "Anyway, enjoy your morning. I'm headed back to my pool. Maybe I'll actually move a chair inside today. Or not. Depends how the sun hits the deck." I turned and walked away, leaving behind a cluster of red-faced neighbors and a Karen who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. She'd underestimated me. I wasn't a victim, I was a strategist. And her biggest mistake was assuming I wouldn't fight back. The next 48 hours were quiet. Suspiciously so. I got a notice from the HOA confirming an emergency board session would be held on Zoom that Friday, and I was invited to attend and share my experiences regarding neighborhood integration and safety. I knew the phrasing was their way of dancing around the issue, but I didn't care. It was on the record. Friday night, I logged into the Zoom call with my camera on, background crisp and clear, showing my tasteful living room now newly furnished thanks to a marathon IKEA session. The HOA board members trickled in, 5 of them in total, including Missy the cat email lady, and a man named Trent who looked like he lifted exclusively to maintain a suburban dad physique. Karen, to no one's surprise, appeared as a guest participant with her name spelled in all caps, Karen R. Longtime resident. The meeting started formally. Introductions, agenda, and then my turn. Kept it cool. I laid out the timeline. The unfounded 911 call. The slanderous accusations shouted in front of police. The threatening note. I showed the security footage, clearly time-stamped, showing a woman who resembled Karen sneaking onto my porch. I didn't say it was her. I didn't have to. The resemblance was enough. Karen burst in, unmuted herself without being prompted, and declared, "This is a smear campaign. She's targeting me. I was only trying to protect our neighborhood from decline." That did it. I leaned in. "Decline? What exactly do you mean by that, Karen?" Silence. "I own my home. I maintain my yard. I pay my dues. I work remotely. I'm a licensed consultant, and I've committed 0 infractions. So tell me, what about me is causing this decline?" More silence. Trent cleared his throat. Okay. Let's keep this civil. It's clear there's been a misunderstanding. But this board does not condone harassment of any kind." Karen logged off 5 minutes later, her square blinking out like a tantrum. By the end of the call, the board had promised a formal letter of support would be issued on my behalf, condemning the anonymous note and urging residents to report harassment, not provoke it. I knew it was mostly performative, but it still mattered. It was in writing. I poured myself a glass of celebration champagne afterward and sat by the pool, eyes scanning the street. I saw lights flick on across the way. I knew she was watching. I held up my glass in a silent toast. To Karen. To concerned residents. To victory. And to the next move. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. After that HOA meeting, I knew Karen had been bruised but not broken. And honestly, I didn't expect her to retreat after one public shaming. Karen was a cockroach. She'd survived other neighbors, scandals, and probably more than one failed attempt to have someone evicted for planting roses instead of HOA-approved hydrangeas. So I dug in for the long haul, because this wasn't just about me defending my right to sunbathe anymore. It was about reclaiming power from someone who had ruled the cul-de-sac like a suburban tyrant for years. She'd made an enemy out of the wrong person. I had a mortgage, a name on the deed, a good job, and a vendetta. And I wasn't going anywhere. So, I started documenting everything. Every glare she gave from her over-trimmed hedges, every time she happened to linger near my mailbox or take photos of my recycling bins, every anonymous HOA notice I received that coincidentally aligned with some comment she'd made earlier that week. I kept timestamps, saved screenshots, organized footage, and even began keeping a neighbor diary. Not because I'm petty, but because evidence is a powerful disinfectant when you're dealing with the rot of self-righteous control. I installed motion-activated lights that flooded my walkway anytime someone tried to sneak close after dark. I added another security camera over the garage, one that synced directly to cloud storage. And I made it obvious I wanted her to know she was being watched too. I mounted a bright red, recorded 24/7 sign beneath my mailbox. Within a week, the neighborhood grapevine buzzed with whispers that the new girl was turning her place into Fort Knox. I didn't care. Let them talk. Let Karen fume. Because every time she sent one of her petty little violations, grass 1 inch over limit, wind chimes too loud, pool float invisible view from street, I responded with documented compliance, municipal code citations, and polite but piercing rebuttals that made her look more and more like the unhinged control freak she truly was. I even printed out a photo of my pool float, an innocuous white swan, and included a copy of the exact page from the HOA manual that said, "Seasonal recreational items must not create a visual nuisance." I highlighted visual nuisance and annotated in red pen, "Subjective. Swan is white. Matches house trim." But the moment everything started to shift was when I showed up to the next HOA meeting with an unexpected surprise. I had filed a formal request for a seat on the board. Yes, I was running for the open position of HOA secretary. Karen's eyes bugged out when the agenda was read and my name was announced as a candidate. She tried to interrupt, sputtering about new residents needing to wait at least 1 year before seeking office. But the bylaws didn't support her. Ide sheka. Twice. The stunned silence in the room when I began to speak, outlining my qualifications, my background in digital policy, my interest in fostering transparency and accountability, was almost theatrical. And by the time I handed out professionally printed flyers with QR codes linking to my home maintenance log and my neighborhood improvement proposal, I saw several of the passive, tired faces around the table begin to brighten. They'd been under Karen's thumb for years. I wasn't just a breath of fresh air. I was a storm blowing through their stale, stagnant politics. Of course, Karen fought dirty. Over the next 2 weeks leading up to the vote, I received a litany of anonymous complaints about my property. One claimed I had unauthorized solar lights. Another said I had visibly political art in my window. It was a peace sign made from driftwood. And one even accused me of operating a business from a residential zone, because I took Zoom calls on my back porch. Each time, I replied with a printed rebuttal and attached a copy to my official candidate binder. And then I did the unthinkable. I went door to door introducing myself. I knocked. I smiled. I handed out cookies and flyers. I listened to grievances. I made notes. And more than anything, I discovered a surprising truth. Most of the people in the neighborhood weren't loyal to Karen. They were just tired. Tired of her micromanaging, tired of her emails, tired of being called out for not rolling in their trash cans before 6 a.m. They were just waiting for someone else to show up. Honestly, one neighbor whispered, glancing nervously around, "She told us you were some criminal, that you had snuck in here during a bank foreclosure, that you were going to flip the house into a halfway home." I blinked. Wow, that's elaborate. The neighborhood had long been under Karen's tight grip, her fear-driven leadership stifling any sense of true community. But that grip began to slip. People saw through her facade, especially when they noticed the simple joys in my yard, my dog, and my garden. During the tense HOA election, neighbors trickled into the community center, quietly casting votes like rebels in a silent revolution. I won by just 5 votes. Not a landslide, but enough. Karen responded with a dramatic Facebook rant. I posted a picture of a puppy next to a flag and wrote, "Let's build something better. Together." The likes said it all. As the new board member, I introduced reforms: evidence-based code enforcement, open transcripts, community events. Karen opposed everything, growing increasingly out of touch. My quiet, persistent efforts started reshaping the neighborhood. Then I hosted a community appreciation picnic with food trucks, music, and raffles. Even Karen's allies showed up. I wore a shirt that read, "HO, happy, open, awesome." She glared from her driveway. I waved. She didn't. Soon, Karen's power crumbled. Her motions were blocked. Her complaints ignored. Desperate, she accused me of misconduct. But I had receipts, zoning approvals, even a notarized legal letter. Her complaint was dismissed as frivolous. She logged off in silence. Then came the moving truck. She disappeared for a weekend. When she returned, she was quiet. No more midnight rose bush pruning, no more flyers, no more eye contact. But silence didn't last. Petty sabotage followed. Trash bins knocked over, mysterious noise, a blinding spotlight aimed at my window. I gathered evidence. Video footage, timestamps, code violations. I submitted it all to the city and harassment board. Karen was cited for harassment and illegal lighting. More importantly, my evidence triggered an ethics probe into her HOA reign. Dozens of complaints, many without proper documentation, came to light. Neighbors finally found their voice. At the next HOA meeting, standing room only, her resignation was announced.
No protests.
Just stunned silence, followed by ginger snaps and someone humming, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." 3 weeks later, I hosted a massive housewarming party. Tropical theme, music, margaritas, food trucks, flamingo floats. Everyone came, even those who had once backed Karen. Kids laughed, dogs played, and the street buzzed with joy. Karen didn't show up, but her absence, that was the real celebration. In fact, during the entire 5-hour event, she never emerged from her house. Not once. Her blinds remained shut. Her porch lights stayed off. A few people whispered that she was peeking out through a crack in her drapes, watching the celebration like a ghost haunting her former empire. One neighbor said they saw her pack up 2 suitcases into the back of a minivan late the following evening and drive off without saying a word. Rumor was she was staying with her sister across town, until she could figure out what to do next. By the end of the month, a real estate sign appeared in her yard. For sale by owner, motivated seller. Good riddance. It's funny how quickly the neighborhood began to transform once she was gone. The HOA stopped issuing random citations. The community garden proposal I had floated months earlier finally passed. And now a section of the common park was filled with rows of tomatoes, herbs, and bell peppers planted by a team of retirees and enthusiastic 10-year-olds. We formed a book club. We held driveway movie nights. Someone started a dog walking group. The same cul-de-sac that once felt like a battleground now felt like a village. As for me, I made one final upgrade to commemorate the end of the war. I installed a cabana by my pool. A sleek, shaded retreat with flowing curtains, plush seating, and a mini fridge stocked with mimosas and chilled lemonade. I even added a Bluetooth speaker and some discreet surround sound speakers in the bushes, so my sunbathing sessions could have their own soundtrack. Usually soft jazz or lo-fi beats, sometimes classic soul. Every time I reclined under the sun, wearing sunglasses and sipping from a chilled glass, I'd glance at the empty house across the street and smile. Not out of spite. Not anymore. But out of relief. I hadn't let her run me out or bully me into compliance. I hadn't sunk to her level. I had outlived her reign with grace, resilience, and more than a little sass. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not moving somewhere else. Somewhere without an HOA, without neighbors who can snap over a pool float or the sound of music on a Sunday afternoon. And every time, I answer the same way, Absolutely not. Because this was my home. I earned it. I fought for it. And no self-appointed dictator with a badge and a Bluetooth headset was going to scare me away. If anything, Karen taught me how to fight for peace, how to stand up without shouting, how to outmaneuver without cruelty, and how to build something better on the ashes of pettiness. Now, when I sunbathe, I do it without glancing over my shoulder. I play music if I want to. I host friends. I wave at neighbors. I garden. I live. And every once in a while, when the sun is just right and the breeze carries the scent of barbecue from 3 yards down, I raise my glass and toast to all the Karens of the world. Because hatred doesn't win when it crashes into joy. In the end, it only makes the light shine brighter. And I own the damn patio where it shines.